Okay, so anyway, 2 low-round picks and Terrell Edmonds for Kevin Byard, who had a chunk of his money already eaten, essentially, by the Tennessee Titans. So it's not costing Philadelphia an awful lot of money this year. What do you make of the deal? And you have to do it, by the way. Your reaction cannot contain the sort of cliched, Howie's done it again, the magician. You gotta go in a different direction.
You said that to open it up.
I know.
You said they did it again.
Yeah, so you can't do it. I've already done it, and that's it. That's all we're allowed to do.
All right, then. Howie's a fraud. He stinks. No. It's just the Eagles have done such a great job at taking advantage of opportunities. And I think it goes back a couple of years when they were kind of like trade down happy in the NFL draft, and they were able to stockpile a couple of extra picks somewhere either in the early parts of day 2, or we know they've had multiple first round picks as well. So it kind of goes back to that strategy where Philly has been stockpiling these draft picks, and it's allowed them to get really creative and aggressive when they've wanted to be on who they want to draft when guys are falling down the list. I think the same can be said when it comes to free agents, because once you build your team in a healthy way through the draft, then that allows you to be more aggressive when it comes to free agents, be more aggressive when it comes to the trade deadline. And it just really feels as though the Eagles have constantly gone about that the right way over the last 3 or 4 years. And I just like the way that it all started with the draft, trading back a little bit, kicking the can down the road, getting future first round picks, which we know hold so much power, continuing to stockpile day 3 picks as well. You find the gems within the draft, like a Jalen Hurts, like Jalen Carter falling to him, like we've seen with a bunch of other players, of course. And that, to me, allows you to say, hey, Kevin Byard's available. He's not going to cost that much. Let's go get him. We're in our winning window. So I just hat tip to Howie Roseman and how he has put all these things together. They've hit on the draft. They've hit on their pro personnel scouting. They've hit on their valuation. They're obviously great with adjusting the cap to saying, hey, we are in a Super Bowl window right now. Let's go get good football players. And to me, they've just gone about it the right way. And I won't say the phrase Howie's done it again, but maybe I'll say the phrase Howie has stuck to the plan, and that plan has been pretty brilliant and put them in a really great situation over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can credit them for being a smart move without kind of going crazy, right? Like this was, I think some of the reaction with every move they make is kind of insane. Like the DeAndre Swift thing, right? It's like, Philadelphia, how do they keep doing this? It's like, well, because DeAndre Swift isn't that good a player, and the Lions didn't really want him, you know? Like, it works that way. So Kevin Byard, on the other hand, is a very good player, but was on a lot of money, and the Titans are happy to move him off, and getting a couple of draft picks and a player in return makes some sense for them. And from Philadelphia's point of view, because the Titans had eaten a chunk of that money, they can bring him in without breaking the bank. And where I think it's smart for the Eagles in a couple of different ways is, number one, it's not costing them the earth, as we said. Number two, as much as they gave up 2 low draft picks to make it happen, they still have 8 draft picks that year, right? They're good at stockpiling those picks for precisely this situation, because a guy might come up available and you can throw them a couple of draft picks to make it happen without getting depleted and rolling into a draft with like 3 picks and needing to make, crazy things happen to restock all your draft picks. Like they do that well so that they have the kind of, the money sitting in the bank essentially for a rainy day for exactly this kind of situation to come along. But it also means that they haven't paid a lot to make it happen, and they're not committed to him long term. If they need to move off Kevin Byard next year when contracts come due, they can make those kinds of things happen. So I think it's a smart move. It's a good move for them without being, oh my God, how did they make this happen?
No, I agree. I think a lot of the memes are just memes at this point, and everybody's trying to just like post the next craziest meme, especially when it comes to the moves that the Eagles make. It doesn't help temper the reaction knowing what A.J. Brown has become for them, right? I mean, like, you get A.J. Brown from that team. He's an all-world wide receiver, and now you're getting a player who is one of the best players on that defense still, and a guy who has been a recent All-Pro. I mean, this dude was an All-Pro 2 years ago, and he's still playing good football. And I think that Kevin Byard is one of the biggest fan favorites and respected dudes in the league. And so for Philly to add him, I just think it's a good player. It's a good dude. And it's a great addition to that team, which, like I said, they're very clearly in a Super Bowl window right now. Go all in. That's why you're here. You put yourself in a situation to have these next 2 or 3 years to form, if we include last year as well, a 3 or 4 year Super Bowl window. That's all you can really realistically hope for. You know, the Patriots dynasty of how long they were good, that doesn't exist, right? I mean, like outside, I mean, Kansas City, certainly the way that they've hit it with Mahomes, they're going to be a threat every single year, but it's so impossible to hold yourself to that bar. Ultimately, certainly within the salary cap era, you have to navigate when you're putting your foot on the gas and when you are rebuilding a little bit. Right now, the Eagles are in pedal to the metal mode. And so I love this move for the flexibility reasons that you mentioned, but ultimately, just because this is a good, smart veteran football player who helps a team that is trying to make a Super Bowl run yet again. But I just think that they did a great job there.
I think one area where I would, not push back, but one thing I think that I would disagree on slightly, like, you're right. You can't aim really to have like the New England Patriots dynasty, right? That's, I don't think, realistic. But what I think you can do is aim to be like consistently good and sort of maximize the windows of like, this is a real Super Bowl opportunity versus we're just good and in the hunt generally. So where I think teams like Philadelphia are smart is not going quote unquote all in, like not going, we're in a window right now, let's throw all the chips in the middle. They're like, we're in a window right now, so let's think about a couple of moves that we might not make otherwise, right? Like if they were just reasonable and maybe trying to make the playoffs and blah, 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 then they probably don't do this deal. But because they're there, they make this deal happen without it crippling them, right? Like if the difference, I think, between this kind of move and going all in is, to me, all in is like, let's go find some move that like is expensive, is going to be a problem down the line, but is worth doing now.
Yeah, but I don't think when I say all in, that's not what I mean. I don't mean being reckless. When I say all in, it's more of a, let's take a good look at the rest of the league and find out players that can help our team right now. They don't need to go all in. Like to the point that you're saying, like a recklessness. They don't need to do that. Their roster is already built that way. All in to me is saying, hey, we're giving up a couple of draft picks and we're taking on a little bit of money to bring a player in. Like that. Allowing yourself to be this flexible for opportunities at the deadline is kind of what I mean for all in. I'm not talking about like what the New Orleans Saints have done over the last couple of years, where now they're $85 million over the cap, and it's just going to be an absolutely abysmal roster, I think, for the next couple of years. That, whether you're in a window or not, I feel like is always bad. If the Saints would have won a Super Bowl, maybe they think differently just because they get the trophy. They think everything's worth it, but
I mean,
that to me is always reckless anyways.
I don't even necessarily think the Saints have done that. I think like this is what the Saints salary cap number always looks like in October. It's like that's just the way they deal with the salary cap. It always looks wildly inflated, and then they cut it all down in March, and this is just the way they play the game. They play it with the credit card rather than the debit card.
They do.
But yeah, I mean, the only reason I think my interpretation of all, like if you think what all in is, right, the poker game, when you shove all those chips in the middle, if the cards don't come up the way you want them to, you're gone. You're all in. You're going home.
All right. Okay. More open-minded, more aggressive. Maybe that's how I should have said it. Not all in.
That I think is where they are smart, is effectively not going all in. They're definitely trying to maximize the window in a way that they wouldn't necessarily do if they were just a solid team, but without, I think, going all in and like imperiling future seasons. And I think that's where they deserve credit. And I think that's why the team has succeeded the way it has the last few years, because they've built in these hedges to almost everything they've done, like every step of the way. I mean, Jalen Hurts was a hedge on Carson Wentz when people thought Carson Wentz was great. Like the fact that they did that. 2 draft picks. A.J. Brown is effectively a hedge on Jalen Hurts because...
Well, I think they're doing that through the draft, though. That was kind of like, to my point, all of this starts because you are actually building your team in a healthy way through the draft. You only get to add these free agents, Darius Slay, the James Bradburys, the Hassan Reddicks, obviously AJ Brown and Kevin Byard are in that as well. Like, you only get to do that if you have properly built through the draft, because then a lot of these moves are more reckless and maybe is more of that all-in term that you were mentioning. So going back to just kind of how I started it, that to me is what's most important for Philadelphia, is that they have gone about it in the way that you want to go about it. You build a roster through the draft, you continue to be healthy through the draft, and that allows you to be flexible and a little bit more aggressive when moments like this become available. And it doesn't have to feel like an all-in thing because you've already built the roster so healthy. And because of that, you've got a lot of guys on rookie contracts who also aren't too bad on the books. So Philly, to me, less of the Byard deal itself, more of how they got to this point is always what's so impressive to me, how they have allowed themselves to be a really good roster, yet still always be flexible to make themselves better.